All right, let's get this started. We're on the record here. It is 9 a.m. on September 9th, 2020. My name is Tyler Vance. I'm an Assistant General Counsel at the Texas Lottery Commission. And with me today on this panel is Tom Hansen, the Director of the Charitable Bingo Operations Division of the Texas Lottery Commission. And the purpose of this hearing today is to receive public comments on proposed rules 402-200, 300, 301, 400, 401, 404, 408, 420, 450, 451, 502, 503, 511, 601, 602, 700, 702, and 703. All of which relate to bingo. And again, those are all from Chapter 402 of the Texas Administrative Rules. And in addition to this public comment hearing, the Commission is accepting written public comments through September 21st via mail, email, and fax. And these proposed rules were published in the August 21st edition of the Texas Register, where you can find all the specific contact points if you want to submit a written comment after this meeting. And those contact points are also available on the Commission's webpage if you search under the August 6th, 2020 Commission meeting. Now, these proposed rule amendments are a result of the Commission's recent rule review that was conducted in accordance with Texas Government Code 2001.039, as well as several stakeholder meetings that were conducted between Commission staff, the Bingo Advisory Committee, and various representatives of the bingo community. The amendments include updates and clarifications of certain terms, and they remove references and citations that are no longer applicable. The proposal implements procedural guidelines related to temporary suspensions that are required by the Bingo Enabling Act, and it implements procedural changes for processing incomplete license applications in order to conserve limited staff resources. The proposed amendments remove record-keeping requirements and other restrictions that were found to be unnecessary to the agency's purpose of ensuring that bingo is conducted fairly and that the proceeds go to charities. Finally, the proposal allows organizations to issue electronic gift certificates, to accept and award donated prizes, and to conduct a bingo occasion using a temporary license without having to display verification from the Commission that it received notification of the occasion. We believe these are all permissible changes that the bingo industry believes will help generate proceeds for charities. Prior to this meeting, in accordance with the notice of the meeting, I received 3 requests to make a public comment. Anyone else who did not submit a request who wishes to make a comment at this hearing should communicate that request through Zoom at any time by either using the raise hand function or through sending me a message through the chat. And if you do that, I'll go ahead, I'll get to you after the 3 scheduled speakers are done. The 3 requests to speak today that I received, one is from Steve Bresnan, representing the Bingo Interest Group, one from Kim Kiplin, representing the Department of Texas Veterans of Foreign Wars, and one from Tom Stewart, Executive Director of Texas Charity Advocates. And so with that, we'll get started first. I'm gonna bring up Steve Bresnan first.
Thank you, Tyler. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Go ahead, Steve.
I thank you all so much. First, we want to thank you, and particularly Tom Hansen, for the way you've conducted the rules review. Been very methodical. Tom, we know this is your first go around as head of the division, and there's a lot going on here, and so we very much appreciate the fact that you've given ample opportunity for participation, and I think you've had your ear to the ground and listened to the industry, particularly in this extraordinarily difficult time for everybody in Texas, and including Charitable Bingo. In general, the Bingo Interest Group supports the rules as proposed, with one exception, and that's Rule 402.450, for which I'm going to talk briefly about some amendments to that rule that we have suggested. We are particularly supportive of the elimination of maintaining a game schedule, 402.200I4. We are supportive of allowing temporary licenses on demand, 402.401. allowing a designated member to renew or print licenses online, allowing use of electronic gift certificates, 402.503, and the audit completion requirements of 402.703. We're especially appreciative for those items that I just enumerated to be addressed. We, on 402.700, we would like to see a little legislative intent put in the register on final adoption. The 402.700B allows a temporary suspension where there is conviction of a gambling offense or fraud, but the rule doesn't say by whom, whether that's a member of the board of a charitable organization, a bingo worker, a hall manager, registered agent, and we would like, and we understand in the past that has generally referred to people on the board, and there's been an opportunity to move those people off or anybody else who may have beyond the licenses, move those people out of the operation before the temporary suspension. We think that's been the past practice, and we would like to see some reference to that to narrow that down a little bit in the, so just as a matter of legislative intent in the register on final adoption. With respect to Rule 402.450, in reviewing this history of this rule and its implementation, it appears that grants or denials have been sort of all over the block. And we are making proposals to nail down a little bit more about what goes in the application for a waiver from the net proceeds requirement. To clean up the rule, there are some redundancies in it that don't really make sense. And the rule fails to give really concrete guidance about what should go into an application. So on behalf of the Bingo Interest Group, I have submitted 2 documents that I would request that you include in the public comments. Because I submitted them twice and there were some minor changes, the documents that you should have are titled Proposed Changes to Section 402.450 recommended by the Bingo Interest Group. That's the actual redlining of the current rule. And the second, that's dated September 3rd, 2020, and an explanation of the proposed changes dated September 4th, 2020, titled Explanation of Proposed Changes to Section 402.450 recommended by the Bingo Interest Group. Rather than go line by line through those, I would, by the way, these have been shared with all of the major bingo organizations, the Texas Charity Advocates, to Kim Kiplin, who has multiple clients. Steve Finolio has signed off on these. I sent them to the Conservative Texans for Charitable Bingo. I've not heard back from them at this point in time. Rather than speak for those groups, though, I would actively and openly solicit their support for these proposed changes. I want to call attention to a couple of items, and just for ease of discussion, I'll refer to the explanation of proposed changes on page 2. I have made it clear in the second discussion, page 2, line 22 through page 3, line 3, that most of that's a reorganization, but on page 3, line 3, we made clear that the list of information types that the commission can consider is not exclusive and preserves both prior practice and agency discretion. Under the existing rule, they don't use the word including, and it could be read to be a finite list. and we're trying to preserve the agency's discretion and also leave room for some of the prior practice. The second specific comment in our recommendation, page 3, lines 4 through 8, would establish a presumption for purposes of legislative intent. I think the language clearly makes that a rebuttable presumption. But if it's an organization's first time within a 3-year period prior to the application to request a waiver, that there's a presumption in favor of it, provided that the application is complete and detailed enough to allow the agency to determine whether it's in the organization's capability to actually carry out the plan. Partly that presumption is designed to have people in bingo proposing things that they believe are workable and giving them the benefit of the doubt, as opposed to the agency having the ability to arbitrarily determine that, well, we just don't think you could do that. The agency could still make that determination, but you'd have a little more of an uphill climb, assuming it wasn't a repeat waiver requester. The language also puts applicants on notice that the organizations that attempt to unreasonably obtain waivers repeatedly will not have the benefit of that presumption. Unless there are any questions about that, that concludes my comments. I very much appreciate you making it easy to participate at this particular time. I know y'all's jobs are not made any easier by the fact that we can't all sit down in the same room and chat and go over these things in detail. So unless you have any questions, that concludes my remarks. And again, I very much appreciate the staff and everything you're doing to help Charitable Bingo.
Thank you, Steve. I don't have any questions. Tom, do you?
I do not, and I want to thank you for your commentary, sir.
Thank you all. I'm going to mute myself and listen to the rest.
All right, thanks, Steve. Next scheduled speaker is Kim Kiplin, representing Department of Texas Veterans of Foreign Wars. And she's already unmuted, so Kim, go ahead.
Good morning. My name's Kimberly Kiplin for the record. I'm an attorney here in Austin. I am commenting today on behalf of the Department of Texas Veterans of Foreign Wars. We did participate in the 2019-2020 rule review process and the meetings with the stakeholders and agency staff. Really appreciated the opportunity to provide comments on that rule review and to participate in those meetings. In my view, the process was extremely collaborative, and the proposed amendments, for the most part, are a result of that process. And just to echo a comment that Mr. Bresnan made to Director Tom Hansen, I want to really extend appreciation to you for how you've handled this process and how you've been receptive and open. The same to you, Tyler. It's just been a really terrific opportunity to exchange ideas and views. And I fully expect that to continue as we go forward. We do support the proposed rulemaking in the main. We also support the proposed changes to Rule 402-450, the waiver request rule recommended by the Bingo Interest Group, for the reasons that were stated in the document that's titled Explanation of Proposed Changes. I do want to go on record, we're not supportive of amending 402-702, the disqualifying convictions, to include in its entirety the Penal Code Chapter 22 assaultive offenses in the list of offenses that directly relate to the fitness of a new or renewal application. Some of the assaults in Chapter 22 are Class C misdemeanors. Arguably, that could probably be carved out already by other language in the rule, but just wanted to highlight that. We are concerned that a broad application of Chapter 22 will have an impact on combat veterans that are now entering civilian life, where as we know, and you all know, I put these comments on the record at the August 6th commission meeting, but the veteran unemployment rate is very high. We have veterans that may be struggling with PTSD or depression. Maybe they've acted out inappropriately, and we've discussed that. I discussed that at the commission meeting, gotten into some kind of fight. maybe in a bar fight or something along those lines. We just really want these young men and women to be able to work in charitable bingo. These are really focused on workers, on the bingo registry worker. These are low-paying jobs as they are, but they do provide a bit of income for their families, and they're useful to the other veterans in developing community. We really think being a part of being able to work bingo at these local posts helps them get into a community. And there are rules that they know they can follow. So I'd like for you to consider that comment regarding just a broad brush on including Chapter 22 in its entirety. To some extent, the reason I'm focused on that is because I think of the current process that may be in place in terms of these criminal history popping up. And what I'm thinking is happening, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you'll get an applicant to be a worker in the bingo registry, and now we've got a assault that's popping up, and then the next thing they get is a notice of a denial to being placed on that bingo worker registry, or if they're current, then maybe a removal. And what I'd like to focus on a little bit is the process, because I do understand that there's a difference between directly the subsection F in terms of whether a criminal conviction relates to the duties, and that's the one I'm focused on in trying to keep Chapter 22 in its entirety not involved. But it goes back to, for me, and I'm focused on the rule, proposed amendments to the rule. It's subsection H. And then in this one, the reason that I'm focused on this is because I want to make sure that the agency's not kind of jumping the gun, so to speak, in sending out these notices that initiate some enforcement proceeding. I would suggest, if it's not happening, and I don't think it is, but I could be wrong, I would suggest that instead of sending out these notices that are initiating this enforcement proceeding, under subsection H, simply ask the questions, because in that it says if the commission determines that the applicant has a criminal conviction directly related to the duties and responsibilities of the licensed occupation, and if you include assault, Chapter 22 assault, in the preceding section, subsection F, then you'll have determined that. But then it says the commission shall consider the following in determining whether to take an action against the applicant. And so what I'd like to see maybe is a different order of the process, where if this pops up on the background check, the criminal history check, instead of initiating the enforcement action and beginning that whole process, simply request additional information to be able to make the determination on whether there should be an action against the applicant. I think in the past, it's been my experience, what's happened is the enforcement action is initiated, and then even though at the staff level, the staff has determined that it's not necessarily, quote, a disqualifying conviction to where it's a total denial, then there's this whole agreed order process. And what I'd like to suggest is maybe revamping that. So I appreciate you all listening to me on that particular aspect. I know I've probably been a little bit tedious, but this really is important to the VFW, this issue of a broad brush on Chapter 22. With that, I appreciate the opportunity to provide comment today. Really appreciate the ability and the flexibility to be able to have these hearings proceed via the Zoom. In my view, this is the third time I've been, I think, a third time with the Lottery Commission, and I think it's working really well. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and I really appreciate your time this morning.
All right, thank you, Kim. I'll just comment on the kind of the application process. I think what we do is kind of a hybrid of what you would prefer and what you think that we do. And so that's when we get an application with a criminal background, with a conviction that's listed under a directly related offenses, we send them a notice of proposed denial, and that lists out why we're proposing to deny their application. And then it also includes a reference to that section H, where it provides them with the mitigating information that we have to consider should they provide that information. And then it gives them the opportunity at the end, it gives them 30 days to provide more information that may mitigate the case, such as letters of recommendation is the typical one. And then it gives them the opportunity also to request a SOA hearing if they like. So, you know, I think the agency feels that's probably the most efficient process on both ends, rather than ask for those things up front, and that just adds another 30 days to every application with a criminal background. So we present all that information to them at the time that we see it. We inform them what we intend to do, but give them the opportunity to provide any mitigating evidence. And then if that mitigating evidence comes in, then we move typically into the agreed order process. But you and I can, of course, speak of that privately as long as you like. So with the hearing in mind here, I'll just, Tom, do you have any questions for Kim?
No, I will thank you, Kim, for your input, and I appreciate your involvement in this process. Thank you.
Thank you. And Tyler, I probably will want to have a side conversation with you regarding the process. So I
Sure.
appreciate your willingness to do that. And with that, I will conclude my remarks.
All right, thank you very much. Next up is Tom Stewart, Executive Director of Texas Charity Advocates. And Tom is unmuted, so go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Tyler. If you guys hear some lovely clarinet music, we got a little homeschooling going on right now. Apologize if that is any interference. Good morning, my name's Tom Stewart. I'm here today representing the 450 plus members of Texas Charity Advocates. Almost 90% of our members are conductors of charitable bingo. TCA generally supports the proposed rule changes. Specifically, we're very supportive of the following modifications. The elimination of maintaining the game schedule, section 402.200 I4, allowing temporary licenses on demand, 402.401, allowing a designated member to renew or print licenses online, allowing the use of electronic gift certificates, section 402.503, and the language around audits being completed within a year of the entrance conference, section 402.703. In addition, as you know, COVID-19 pandemic has played havoc with conducting charitable bingo this year. And while many halls have reopened under the capacity limits in place, many others have not, due to health concerns for the conductors and their customers. This will likely result in many charities having difficulty meeting the net proceeds requirements. TCA strongly supports the proposed modifications to section 402.450 submitted to staff by Mr. Bresnan and the Bingo Interest Group. Not only will this provide charities with a clearer path in meeting the net proceeds requirements, it also provides the staff with greater flexibility in their enforcement of this important requirement. We're very, like the others, we're very appreciative of the collaborative approach that staff has followed in this review process. We very much appreciate that. And we look forward to continuing to work with you once the revised rules are adopted. And that ends my comment.
All right, thank you, Tom. Tom Hansen, do you have any questions for Tom Stewart?
I do not, but I do thank him for his participation. Thank you, Tom, sir.
All right, last chance here. I don't see anyone who's raised their hand to speak or provided anything in the chat. And I'm looking on the attendees, and it looks like most folks are staff members who I don't imagine are going to make public comments. So with that, I think that's going to conclude this meeting. But again, remember that if you would like to submit written comments, that period is open through September 21st via mail, email, or fax as provided in the June 21st issue of the Texas Register. One last check. Okay, there are no more requests to speak. So no more witnesses. We're going to conclude this hearing. The time is 9:23 a.m. And we are adjourned. Thank you very much. This public comment session is closed.